how do you stay focused on your growth even through the toughest of times, whether it's personal growth or the growth of your business? If you're interested in knowing how to stay resilient, if you're interested to grow your business and look at opportunities at this time, well, stay tuned because we have insights for you from angel investor Shrishti Sahu. Welcome everyone to Rise and Be Rich show, where we bring experts and information on what you need to know to take your coaching, consulting, wellness service, or small business into high growth or to the next level and reach your goals. So today we are very fortunate to have Shrishti Sahu, managing partner of SSV, an angel investor, to talk about how to stay invested in your future and stay focused on your growth through this COVID. So Shrishti is one of the panelists of Praram 2020, and even that explores the new normal through and post-COVID, where we will learn on how to adapt in order to meet success at this time. So we're really excited to talk to Shrishti about this topic today. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ahana. Thanks for having me here.
So Shrishti, I would love to start by sharing your backstory. Could you let us know a little bit about you, your background, but also what you would be sharing at Praram?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me here once again, and I'm looking forward to this lovely conversation and interacting with some of your customers as well and listeners. So I actually started out my journey as an entrepreneur, where we went through multiple experiments, trying to figure out which business model would work best. But essentially what we finally arrived at was a platform for artisans in rural communities, where we would help them sell artisan-made garments online. And while it was a very interesting experiment, because I got to work with artisans very closely, and obviously it's beautiful to see them put the garments together and the intricate embroideries that they go through. But in the same process, we were able to learn a lot from artisans and understand more about how they get or source raw materials for the garments that they make in these communities. So interestingly, we arrived at the conclusion that these artisans would take micro loans from lending institutions in those rural communities, and it was a very, very tedious and inefficient process. In the same way, most of the loan collectors would come to these artisans on a regular basis and take down collections from them on pieces of paper. And who knows how they would treat the pieces of paper. But essentially what I'm trying to say is that there was no technology, so to speak, to be enabling those loans that were happening at these rural communities level. So we basically built a solution, which was a fintech solution for lending institution, or NBFCs, non-banking financial companies in India, essentially to enable this lending process for them. And it was essentially an Android application which would help them enable all these transactions that were happening on ground in these communities. So not only artisans, but also anyone in these rural communities who was taking these micro loans could be helped and enabled through that. So essentially that, scaled really quickly. We got to 5 lakh customers in a very short span of time. We were processing close to $5 million in transaction volume every month. So we got to see really quickly product market fit, and we scaled very quickly to a decent number of customers as well. And this is when demonetization happened. So obviously the fintech sector kind of got really hit, and the customers that we were primarily catering to, NBFCs specifically, didn't really have any cash to be able to give out any loans, right? So this was when one of our customers made us an acquisition offer for the tech that we essentially built. And I thought, that was a good return on investment in terms of how we built and scaled the product. And it was a good exit for us as well. So we ended up taking that offer. The team was very small. It was literally a 6-member team that was able to pull this through. So I really believe in keeping lean teams, growing and seeing traction, and learning from customers as you evolve your entrepreneurial process. So soon after that, as an entrepreneur, it always was in the back of my mind to understand what makes a businesses investable. And I wanted to understand the ecosystem from a lens of VC as such. So I joined the investment team of Lumis Partners, which was essentially a private equity fund. At that time, it was a $250 million fund, and they were investing across verticals such as supply chain and human capital. So that is when, I started understanding investing mechanisms really closely, understanding unit economics, understanding the whole process of how investment teams literally look at startups. And after that is when I was headhunted by Facebook to lead strategy for how Facebook works with startups in India. And that was also a very interesting role, because I was not only able to understand the ecosystem from an entrepreneurial lens, then an investor lens, but also from an ecosystem enabler lens.
Yeah.
And really understand that how to build things at scale, how to build global and local programs to empower startups and entrepreneurs. So at Facebook, we essentially built programs that were focused on emerging technologies or women entrepreneurship and also social impact. And those were really great experiences. I was working with 800 startups across all these different programs. And always at the back of my mind wondering why I'm not on the other side, because obviously I'd seen how exciting entrepreneurial journey could have been, right? So essentially that's how I moved on for Facebook in December 2019. And literally 6-7 months from there, as we are today, I've started investing in companies. So I have my investment entity, which has made some seed stage investments, and primarily we look at early stage startups as a part of that, and also an entity that helps startups and companies with business development activities and global marketing. So as business development as a service is something that we're offering to various companies right now.
Mm. That's really impressive. But I was going through your LinkedIn profile as well, and what I found is that and I can see the buzz and the kind of posts that are that you're going through, and how others are responding. So you come across a lot of founders and entrepreneurs. So a lot of the people that would be listening to this podcast, they're either just starting, or they're in 1 to 3 years of the business, or slightly further along, but they're trying to either grow or scale. So what do you look for when you're looking at traits of a founder who can grow that business even through the ups and downs and all through this crisis, in this time of crisis? What kind of traits do you look for?
Great question, Ahana. I think, in my investing journey so far, what I've been able to understand really well is something called founder market fit. And I think that is what I lead with in most of my conversations with entrepreneurs. So while it has become very fashionable to start businesses and a lot of people are jumping into entrepreneurship, and I think that's fantastic, right? Because we need new entrepreneurs to come and create job opportunities and economic opportunity as well. So I think that's fantastic. But typically what I look for is founder market fit. So how well does a founder understand that space? It doesn't really mean that I'm looking for quantity or years of experience in the same field, but understanding your customers really well is essentially what I'm getting at, as to does the founder have unique insights or a unique perspective as to how the sector is evolving or how the space that they're in is evolving. So that also goes back to the point of domain expertise. If you're able to understand the space that you're catering to, if you understand the needs of your users or customers really well, is essentially what I look for when I'm having those early discussions with a founder. And of course, resilience plays a big part of that as well, right? So are you able to stick on when things get really tough, because entrepreneurship comes with so many highs and lows on a daily basis. Literally, no day will look like the same. Every day will be different and have different challenges thrown at you. So essentially what I'm trying to get at is that, is the founder in it for the long run, or is the founder going to stick through this or see it through, essentially through its challenges, highs and lows, etc. And I guess the last thing of it would be that, is the founder able to excite people when they're sharing their idea or the space or the product that they've built? Because essentially a founder's role is to be able to excite people, be it investors, customers, users, about what they're building, about what the space they're in as well. So those are some of the things I would say I look for. 3 things then to make it very easy for people to understand: founder market fit, resilience, and thirdly, your network.
Right. And, I was reading, and one of the posts that you just recently posted was about your, I think about your run. And, you can see the kind of mental habits and, the way you're focused and motivated. Is there anything that you do regularly that, you keep, how do you keep yourself motivated and moving towards your growth? What do you do? Kind of along.
That's actually one of my favorite questions, Ahana. So right on spot for that one. So essentially, I actually did a post where I completed 10,000K in terms of
Yeah,
running mileage. So I thought that was a great accomplishment, and I was feeling really good about having been consistently running for the last 10 years of my life. And I was an athlete in school also, so I think some parts of my mindset actually can be traced back to then. Because honestly, I feel that excellence is what we repeatedly do. It's not something that we say we're going to do, or not our dreams and aspirations, but literally our actions on an everyday basis. So I get very fascinated by creating routines that can help me stay disciplined. So essentially, I guess what I've been able to do is I'm a completely morning person. Every day I wake up at 5 a.m. And I go to bed really early also. And that means saying no to a lot of things that are happening around you in your social circles. That's literally a goodbye to all of that, right? So, but I find it really fascinating because, for me, as a person, I need discipline in my life to be able to be my best self or live my best life. So, those are some of the things that I feel personally motivated by, being able to get up early in the morning, go for my run, come back, meditate, etc. So, those are some of the things that keep me going as a person. So, I think it's very important for each one of us individually to just identify what gives us energy. For me, running in the morning, meditating, that gives me energy and like sets a great tone for my day. For some people, it could be like staying up all through night and just getting work done in those peaceful hours. So literally, it's about identifying what are those unique things that work for you. I don't think there's a one size fits all, but essentially, my post was related to discipline and having that mindset.
Yeah, I know you. I'm an early riser too, and I go to sleep very early. And yesterday I had a podcast at 8:30, so I had to finish everything because I knew the moment I would finish that podcast, I'm hitting bed because I've got this.
It's a very different lifestyle for all morning risers, right?
Yeah.
Like you literally after 10 p.m. I don't exist to the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change the direction a little bit because we are talking about this time, and what changes are you seeing through this time in the startup environment, especially the challenges as well as the opportunities that this time brings?
Sure. So I can talk a little bit about how startups are going through the fundraising process, because I think that's what's on a lot of entrepreneurs' minds, especially when it's come down to literally survival and cash management on so many different levels.
And
yeah, sure.
I'll just, since you're going to talk about this, there was another question that was submitted to us by a community member. So this lady, her name is Teresa Dupuy, and she runs a company called the Yoni Company. They came up with this product of, a leak-proof underwear kind of a thing. And they tried to raise funds for the last slightly over a year. So she sent us this question saying that, they were unsuccessful in doing it. And now they're trying to pivot because, they have to keep growing that company. So where does the fundraising, how do you raise funds at this time? And as an investor, what would you be looking for to help businesses like this raise funds? So I kind of think that goes hand in hand with what you're going to say. So I thought I'll just bring her question in as well.
Yeah, definitely. I will cover some aspects of that as well.
Yeah.
So honestly, when COVID started, I think most of the investor community was a little taken aback. In the sense of like, where do valuations go from here, right? Because primarily, at least in the Indian ecosystem, what we were seeing was a lot of like inflation happening, or inflated valuations coming up to us in most of the investor decks when people were approaching us to raise funding. But obviously, given how public markets also responded, where there was a 30 to 50% valuation dip in most of the public companies as well. So that's how early on in the COVID space, we started cutting down on a lot of valuations. And I saw that happening for a few of my portfolio companies as well. But I would say like fundraising activity now has come back to what it was before COVID times as well. And in some cases, I think it's accelerated as well, because a lot of founders who would have been or could have been founders were stuck in jobs, maybe just thought that this was the right time to start. or start exploring different geographies. So a lot of interesting, exciting things happened in the last few months, even though it was a very grim time overall in terms of how serious the situation is. So, essentially what happened was, first the valuations were taking a hit, but now I think the valuations are also close to where they were, or maybe just about like 20% lower than what they were. In terms of fundraising activity, I would say that it has resumed. But in the sense of like, I think people are approaching it very differently, in the sense of like, are we paying the right price for the right things that have been built? And that should have been the VC analogy all along, but I think that often got sidelined when in the last few months, because there's just a lot of excitement in the startup ecosystem, right? So essentially, because I mostly make seed stage investments, there you may not have seen like a product already built, but I don't think that most of the deals that are happening right now can happen without a good product that has been built already, or traction. So that is definitely a change that I've observed, that for earlier teams would just come with like good pitch decks and sometimes be pre-product, pre-revenue, and still be able to raise funding. But now that's definitely not the case. So I think to the question that the listener also asked, that it's become very critical to be able to justify what you're raising funding for, and also how you will deploy it. So essentially what you need to be able to show is some early traction. So it's completely fair to pivot. A lot of businesses have had to pivot in these times because they didn't know what else they could do, or the markets that they were catering to no longer existed in the same way. So that's definitely a new economic reality, and investors don't perceive that negatively at all. So I think the first thing is that don't think of like pivoting as a negative experience in itself, because it's not to say that you won't be able to raise funding, but what you essentially need to be able to show is some traction or some feedback from customers of a need that you've been able to identify with your new business model that you're serving, that you will be able to build on top of. I think that those are some of the early signals of success that will be able to help you get funded. Because as investors, we want entrepreneurs to succeed, right? Like our money grows only if the entrepreneur or the startup grows. So essentially, a lot of it is riding on is the entrepreneur able to identify a good opportunity and go completely at it. So I think that is something that essentially what investors are looking for: early traction, love from users. If you've got a product that might have not scaled to millions of downloads, but what are people saying about it? What are the app reviews looking like? How much rating are you getting from customers? So customer testimonials, etc., become very critical at this stage, essentially to see what is the need that you've been able to solve.
Yeah, and even with our business, what we're seeing with our clients as well, that you have to really niche right now to dominate a niche versus trying to go a little bit broad. So you have to really prove your case to your tribe in order for that interaction to happen. So let me just also ask you, you've been working with technology and on sort of like startups. We have also talked about Facebook, when at that stage you were working with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and then we're seeing this massive movement sort of moving online, social media. So how do you use all of that to your advantage? How important is it right now for entrepreneurs, and what would you suggest that they start looking at in terms of this movement that's happening?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a fantastic movement that's happening from being completely offline and non-digital to now embracing technology. And I think, like, to give you an example of how the Indian ecosystem has evolved in just like the last 3-4 years, with Geo coming into the picture, there have been 340 million new users of internet who've used internet for the first time and now are building businesses online as well, right? So there's a big significant shift in terms of how these users are approaching the whole digital landscape. I think that's why you're seeing a lot of, at least in India, a lot of businesses are starting to cater to this new audience. This is essentially called the next billion domain. So when now more and more people have gotten connected, so what will their needs look like? What will the services or products look like that they want to use? So I think that's a fantastic opportunity for entrepreneurs to sort of cash in on, or try to think of like what is that digital ecosystem that you can create for people who are coming online for the first time. And if you're an entrepreneur who's taking your business online for the first time, I think now it's more important than ever before, because literally, if you think of a user or customer behavior, essentially before buying anything, be it a product or even like daily essentials, you go on to Google or you do a quick search on what people are saying about it, right? So literally being able to control the messaging that is going out about your brand, or how you're communicating to your customers and your unique audience, is essentially where the core of the messaging lies and what you need to really focus and hone. So I would say a lot of focus needs to be on thinking about how you're building that digital presence. Are you visible to more and more users? How are you acquiring new users through that messaging as well? So those are some of the things that I would urge the listeners to think about.
Awesome. I would love to keep chatting with you, but my timer is showing that we're running out of time because this is a short podcast show. But I hope we can bring you back, because I think, you know, you're touching on topics which I can go on, you know, another 20 minutes or half an hour on. But thank you so much for joining us. Is there somewhere where we can direct the attention of you know, the listeners? Where would you want them to get more information about you? Is that your LinkedIn or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think LinkedIn and Twitter, where I'm both active. LinkedIn, I'm sort of a power user and I do push out a lot of content as well. So I think, be it like on an investment activity or how I'm thinking about different spaces, I think that's the best place for people to reach out.
Yeah. But I would highly recommend you follow her on LinkedIn, because I just, you know, I've been looking at the posts. I've just been seeing the posts that you like and you're commenting on and you're connecting different people, and you get a ton of information, incredible startup projects that are happening. So stay tuned on that. What I'll do is I'll put the link of that with this podcast and with this show, with a video, whichever way it gets aired out. I'll put a link of that so that you can click and get to Shrishti's profile. So thank you so much, Shrishti, for joining us.
Awesome. Fantastic, Ahana. Thanks for having me and good luck for your show.
Thank you. And for those of you who are looking for our free trainings on high growth marketing, you know, you can join us at ahanalara.com/hyping packages. Essentially, what it will do is allow you to download the guide on creating, there's a hyping package for coaching, consulting, or service package in your niche. You can download that and it'll direct you to the group where all of the free trainings are parked. And that's at www.ahanalara.com/hyping packages, all one word. And that's it. I hope this interview inspired you to review where you are and then plan to take your business to the next level. All the best to you. And I'll see you once again on another episode of Rise and Be Rich.